Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today I've been reading about how the subconscious controls 95% of our decisions. Now the conscious mind only controls 5% of our decisions. And this really made a lot of sense for me because through this spiritual awakening, through this kundalini awakening process, I've been discovering how difficult it really is to act from a place of wisdom and of, we'll just use the term higher self or spirit at all times, and how easy it is to slip back into unconsciousness. And it makes sense that it's because the subconscious mind really dictates so much of our behaviors. And through the awakening process, I feel like that's why things can get so dark and so challenging, is because all this new awareness is really shining a light on our subconscious patterns that have been in us. I was reading this book that said most adults or most kids have been fully programmed by the age of 6, and they just run out those programs the rest of their life unless they become conscious that programs are running them. And once we become aware that we're just being run by our subconscious mind and its programs that it's taken on, then we can really start to work with it and to reprogram it. And the subconscious mind is where all the fear is. It's where all the darkness really resides. You have the subconscious and then the conscious and then the superconscious. And we could term the superconscious mind spirit or your higher self, or just more of like a God perspective. And then the conscious mind is your thoughts right now. And then the subconscious mind is where all the memories of your life and all like the traumatic things that happened and all the pain and the unaddressed wounds and suffering. That's where it all goes. If you wanted to look at like a scan of your body, a lot of the subconscious wounds that haven't been healed would just like be these black dots, And if you're someone with a lot of unhealed subconscious trauma, then your body is going to scan for like a lot of these black and gray areas. And that's what we, call someone like they just feel heavy. It's that they just are hanging on to so much of this trauma unknowingly, and they haven't come into the awareness of how to really open to this darkness to allow it to come up and heal. So that's why you'll see people doing just things like in a repetitive nature. Maybe they're repetitively projecting guilt, or they are always in the state of anger or fear. A big one for me has been fear and anxiety, how things always just used to give me anxiety. And it's because I was an anxious and fearful person that things would make me anxious and fearful, right? It's because people are angry that things and events make them angry. It's because people have a lot of repressed guilt that they're always feeling guilty about something in the world, right? And these are those dark spots I'm talking about in the subconscious. And I feel like that's a big movement of what was like really coming up for me with all these electrical symptoms I was talking about yesterday. I think all of this like electricity, all of this, crawling kundalini sensations, they're it feels twofold. Like new cells are coming alive that have been dormant for so long, because I have been putting such an emphasis on opening my heart, and I've been putting so much emphasis on calling in more of the divine, calling in more of this transformational energy that will transform my consciousness and will help me to open my heart. So I think there's that aspect of it. But on the other side of the coin, there's also the aspect of I'm becoming, because these cells are being awakened, I'm becoming of what was repressing them and what was keeping them suppressed in the first place. And truthfully for me, it's been so much resentment that's coming up, so much bitterness, so much argument in my mind. So much of my life I've had this ongoing argument with imaginary people in my head. And this could be anyone. It could be like coworkers, partner, family members, friends. Just like these ongoing debates, of trying to always be right. And that's another one that's coming up for me, this need to always be the one who is like just right, to win every argument. All this dualistic stuff, right and wrong, and good and bad. And I've noticed so much of this resentment and this bitterness has been with me for so long. And it's been a big reason why I've had such a hard time even feeling love my whole life or showing it. And my love had always been so conditional on getting what I wanted, right? And I was talking about this with one of my best friends. She's so beautiful and amazing. And I was saying, talking with you, I feel this safety in showing love and receiving love. And I was saying to her, like, I think throughout my whole life, for whatever reason, I've had this block there where it's been a very uncomfortable thing for me to really show and receive love. And I've always shut down, and I've always been overtaken by fear anytime any real emotion has come through. And what really has triggered all of this is like old energetic wounds really coming up to the surface and being totally blindsided by how reactive I can still be towards those that I've created long-standing energetic shadows with. And it's really humbling on this path when you realize how easy it still is for you to get pulled into unconsciousness and reactivity. And I'll just use an example. I was texting with someone and they brought something to me that I didn't really want to hear. And initially my first reaction was to focus on, why are you projecting guilt and negativity and just anger or whatever? What is wrong with you that you're projecting this on me, right? That was my first, instead of like just seeing that this person who was reaching out to me was going through pain and was hurting, and that I had contributed to that in some way, instead of seeing that and approaching the situation with compassion and consciousness, I immediately, my subconscious like took over and it like just pulled me. And I was, as I was typing, I felt like powerless to the subconscious. And it was like startling, like, holy shit, I'm being really reactive right now. I'm super, super fucking triggered. And a lot of what this person said to me was true in it, and it was part of my shadow that I hadn't been looking at, and I had probably even been repressing to some extent. And so it was just very humbling to see how the subconscious is still such a prevalent and powerful force in my life, and how much work still needs to be done to just start seeing those, like we were talking about, seeing the black and gray dots in me that are that have unfinished business, that need to be fully integrated. And I think that's just the message. Today is just one more of those videos of just kind of giving you a peek inside of my process, my inner process. And sometimes it's really joyful and expansive and fun and light, right? And then sometimes, we're really working through the subconscious and the darkness and our wounds and our trauma. And I think it's important to show all the full picture of an awakening. That's really the original. I'll just be real with you guys. The original intent of this channel and my blog was never to start any type of spiritual coaching business, or maybe that was there, but it wasn't really like, I thought that would be like, so long from now, right? The real intent was to just, I felt like the gift I could give was to just share so openly and authentically, like the light and the dark of a spiritual awakening. And that's why on days like today, when I don't really feel like shooting a video and opening up to you guys in the way of like, you look at this darkness I still experience, because there's part of me that always wants to say, just look at all the good that comes with this, and it all is good. But let me just say this more clearly. There's always this part of me that wants to portray myself as I have it figured out. And that goes back to the beginning of the video where I was saying like, there's this aspect of me, there's always been this argument in my mind about trying to always be right, you know? And that's that same shadow. So for me, sharing, you know, how I integrate my shadow, it even helps me to lay that to rest and to let go of trying to project a false image for some type of response that I hope to get back, right? Because the little me, my subconscious or whatever you want to call it, my ego says, if you're honest about how you still go through darkness and you still are lapsed into unconsciousness and that people still trigger you and that you still can be very reactive and negative towards others at times, then the people watching won't trust you and won't think as highly of you and all this stuff, right? And I'm just realizing how false that all is and how powerful real truth is, real vulnerability is, and not only self-healing, but really helping you guys realize like nothing bad happens. Because that's been a hard thing for me to realize, being so open, is like nothing bad's gonna happen. And yeah, I think that's really what I want to talk about today, is just reprogramming that subconscious mind. And the way to do it is really through the darkness and through opening your heart and through being honest with yourself and seeing that when you see other people hanging on to resentment and bitterness and this heaviness, that seeing that how it exists in you and using other people's unconsciousness as a mirror for your own. And realizing that it's okay if you get triggered. It's okay if you just act out sometimes, and that if you're just really reactive and do things and say things you're not necessarily proud of, and if you just totally drop the ball. Like in that conversation, looking back on it, I'm just like, geez, I totally dropped the ball. Like, it reminded me of who I used to be, you know, years ago, and that's the subconscious for you. It's years and years and years, maybe lifetimes of programming, and it's going to take time for it to be rewired and for the programming to fall away. But this happens naturally. There's not much trying required. Unfortunately, there's no secret sauce, there's no secret pill you can take. This is just a movement of love. It's a movement of honesty, it's a movement of courage, and it's a movement of peace. And it's primarily, a big one is a movement of fearlessness, of being able to be fearless with yourself about what exists within you that is dark and still not integrated. And I don't even mean dark as a negative, because our darkness is our power. So it's not something to be repulsed by. It's something to be embraced, and it's something that can teach us innumerable, invaluable lessons about ourselves. So, end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you can relate. Feel free to add stuff in the comments if you'd like about your own subconscious reprogramming process, or another way to say this is integrating your shadow. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Namaste.